would love to talk a little bit about the next egg, that work. So can you tell me a little bit, because sounds like a big, hairy, audacious goals to redirect trillions of dollars from in retirement savings from Wall Street to Main Street, because that is not incremental change. That is just revolutionary. So can you tell me about what went into even thinking that this was possible and what was the kind of hardest part of doing that work?
I don't do things because I think they're possible. I do things because I think they're necessary.
I wish I could let off confetti when you said that.
And I will just say, it's now $44 trillion.
My goodness.
And our little tiny coalition hasn't yet made a dent in that. So that is still very much weighs heavy on my heart. Last year, a colleague, Rachel Fagiano from Funders for Racial Justice Coalition, produced a report, and it really just broke down that 44 trillion is invested in big three: Fidelity, State Street, and Vanguard. And what they are invested in is undermining the very life support systems that we need to have a healthy society and a healthy planet. So most of that is being invested in extractive mining, increasing surveillance technologies, carceral systems, and on and on and on. I can link to that report. The ambition behind this initiative that started in 2019 as a collaboration between Lift Economy and the Sustainable Economies Law Center and Michael Schuman, who is a kind of like a local investing thought leader, was that we know that there are mechanisms within the current legal frameworks and the current retirement vehicle structures to roll over those funds out of control of the vanguards and into what's called checkbook control, where folks could actually reclaim those funds and be writing their own checks to local investing opportunities. What you get into is this dynamic where there's this very patronizing and very demeaning culture in the culture of financial intermediaries, where they start arguing with individuals who want to be values aligned and say, well, that's not prudent, or that's not a wise choice for your financials. I would argue that it's not a wise choice for humanity to have the very money that we're banking on pulling from in our future be undermining that very future.
I say this all the time, and I'm based in Illinois, and we have, after your company reaches a certain size, you're required to start an investment fund for your company. And so and the state has one that you can participate in, but I always tell business owners, in Chicago and throughout Illinois, that is an opportunity to live your values about being intentional about where your money is being placed, because we cannot complain about these, systemic violence, really, and then turn around and give our money to the same systems that are, bringing violence on our communities and causing harm to the very people that we are trying to support. And that goes to not just where you have your retirement funds, but also, where you have where you choose to spend. That's what the real cost of those choices is. Are we propping up a system of violence and harm with our decisions, or are we intentionally fighting against it?
Absolutely. What you just named, what I've learned in working with people for so many years is that shame and despair and hopelessness is not a very strong place to move from and do the hard work that it actually takes to not put, like after those companies in Illinois get to that particular scale, the easier path is to start the state mandated retirement fund and to just go the status quo. The much harder path that requires immense fortitude and persistence and dedication would be to develop a vehicle where those funds could be self-directed by the employees of that company. That would be a much harder path.
Yeah.
And that is why at Lift Economy, we've come to the realization that building communities of practice where people who want to take that much harder path can join and be affirmed and be supported and be resourced is critical. And so the
Yeah.
Next Egg community, we've created a community of practice of over 300 members where you can join this online platform, ask your questions, but you've got to have that spark and drive before joining the community to not be distracted by roadblocks or derailed by roadblocks. You
Right.
have to have that commitment first. And I would say it's the same reason why we started, in addition to our MBA community, we just started a Next Economy living community that's really around creating that community of practice that can support people in the personal life design aspects.
Yes.
And I get heartbroken every time I talk about this community because I wish it were the case that we could just walk out our front door and the easy path would just be borrowing tools from our neighbors and sharing and having
Right.
free potlucks and shared food resources down our block and a medicinal herb garden and free community clinics that were preventative wellness focused. Like, I
Oh,
wish that all of these things that
yes.
are so achievable, so immensely
Yes.
possible. I wish that they were easy. And right now, because of how our economy, because of the historical underpinnings of our economic system and decisions made by, largely a small group of white men, it's
Right.
not easy for people. And that's
Yeah.
why we started Next Economy Living. That's why we started Next Egg. And honestly, Lift Economy cannot do it. So that's why connecting with people like yourself, coalitions and networks across the country, we need to have, connected coalitions to make the values aligned choices easier than they are currently.
I love that you called that out because these things are often intentionally designed to be hard. Systems of power are hard to circumvent by their nature. And having a community to move through things with so that you are not recreating the wheel every time definitely can help, people to move forward and move faster. Just like there's an old African proverb that, if you want to go slow, go alone. And if you want to move fast, go together. And the power of that collective force, is really the only way that we are going to topple the systems that otherwise are designed to strangle us in the world that we are living in.